Hello and welcome to From the Otaku Desk. This is a segment of the podcast that's a little bit different from the normal, as I think primarily it's just going to be me by myself musing on things and doing some editorializing. The definition of anime is really just a truncating of the Japanese loanword for the English word animation, and is used to reference animations, regardless of their country of origin. Outside of Japan, particularly among Western fans, the term anime is used more to reference specific products, but there's always a lot of debate around the strict definitions of what should be labeled as anime versus what should not be. You could label something that was produced in Japan as anime, but that would mean that a number of products, particularly a lot of American television cartoon series from the 80s and 90s, could be considered anime that are not traditionally referenced as such. Productions that were animated in Japan, but written by American companies, such as Tiny Toons, Inspector Gadget, the original Transformers, stuff like that. So that means that any animation that is done by an animation studio in Japan would not necessarily be able to be categorized by Western fans as being anime. This also gets a little tricky too when you consider that a lot of the work by what is traditionally referenced as anime by Western fans isn't always exclusively done within Japan as well, particularly with a lot of the work being farmed out to firms in Korea, and now in more recent years, firms in like Vietnam and Thailand, or through extensive internet working resources, random people scattered throughout the globe being part of the animation process of some shows. Going back to the requirement being that it was animated in Japan, would that mean series like Solo Leveling or Tower of God, which are based on original manhwa by Korean authors, are those truly considered anime by Western fans? With the creation aspect in mind, we have the criteria of the story being of Japanese origin. That becomes tricky, particularly when we're talking about some of the Studio Ghibli films, most notably Howl's Moving Castle, which is based off of an English novel of the same name from the 60s, if I remember correctly. I feel that a lot of Western fans' attachment to the rigid definition of anime as being an exclusively Japanese thing is largely tied to their need to have their fandom be something exclusive and unique for them, something to separate them from what they consider as the norm. I'll dive into the concept of anime as a popular medium versus an underground medium in another episode of From the Otaku Desk, because I think the real point of this one is just the question of why are Western fans so obsessed with the title of anime and applying it to things that they enjoy. What does the purpose serve to rigidly classify an animated production from Japan as anime and reject the label for a product that's not necessarily of Japanese origin, but also shares stylistic and artistic qualities with many products that are classically deemed as falling well within the definition of the medium? So let me know what you think. I'm sure it's going to be contentious and interesting. And most of the time, I don't even bother to pronounce the name or to say the name in the correct Japanese pronunciation, largely because of laziness. And the cadence of saying anime versus anime doesn't usually flow well in the context surrounded by other English words, in my opinion. It's easier to slip in between manga and manga. Manga just flows quicker, I think. Anime versus anime is a longer sounding word. And so for brevity, I just use the Americanized in most contexts. I'm of the opinion that the title is kind of irrelevant. It's useful in a way of generalized conversation to give people an idea of what you're talking about, setting a framework for expectations that for people that are familiar with a wide breadth of anime realize isn't even true to begin with, because there are so many varying artistic styles and story types that it's disingenuous to assign a specific look and feel to a single word as an identifier. It's why we have so many different subdivisions of everything we can think of. Because when you get down to it, all of these things may share a common trait, But in reality, beyond that trait, they're vastly different from each other. So when you tell somebody that I watch, anime, really good chance one of the first things that will pop into mind for them is maybe Dragon Ball Z or Jujutsu Kaisen or some other popular shonen show, or Howl's Moving Castle or Totoro, or if they're cognizant of their childhood being not necessarily of the origin of their country, Pokemon. But they won't think of things like Kaiba or To Your Eternity or From the New World or, well, maybe Psycho-Pass. I think it's disingenuous for Western fans to so rigidly apply the broad term of anime to do what we refer to as anime, because I think it belittles the breadth of stylistic stories that come from Japanese creators and studios. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you guys next time.